is it to get the okay. So I said that this module, suppose you have get the funding, you have conducted successfully your project, and you have generated result. Now you have generated result. What is the next step? Through this module, we try to answer. There are many answers. There are many possibilities. We just try to summarize, but you will find more when you conduct your own project. So the presentation. So I am Mamadou Diallo, as partner project regional coordinator, and as partner present this training for you. So some rules, simple rules that can help us optimize the presentation. Keep your microphone muted when you're not talking. Turn off your video unless you're speaking. Use the chat to ask a question, etc. So just a small recap of the previous chapter where you talk about understanding how to set up technical activities and how to schedule and budget them. Remember that these activities are closely related to your specific objective, which are the details of your general objective. That's why I asked Gaoussou yesterday to come back on this part, because this is one where the evaluator really looks at, they pay attention on how you really want conduct your project and how it is structured, monitored, and so on. So this is a very particular aspect we insisted on, and we want you to pay attention. So in this module 7, we are talking about the result. And in the result, you will have two parts: the dissemination. You will have communication of your result. You have dissemination, and you have exploitation. So in this part, we will focus on the last part, with the result, research result exploitation, and which focus on research contract, intellectual property, data protection. So just in a summary to give you some definition that you may know and understand. Here at the left part, I show you your result, the result generated by your project. You see that they have a lot of direction, and I write here, MS means Ministry of Health, in French is Ministère de la Santé, European Union policy makers, etc. It can be Minister de la Santé, it can be African Union, your government, policy makers in your country. And if you look at this aspect only, you have your result can produce recommended policy recommendation. It can produce a result. It can help collaboration platforms. But when you take the civil society and citizens, then your result can produce skills and knowledge, but also education materials. It can also produce code of conduct. For the industry and innovation, you can have prototype, you have pre-standard, you can have software. For the research communities, you can have data sharing, you can have publication, you can have research roadmap, etc. So briefly, this is what the type of result your project is generating when it is successfully conducted. So at the right part here, I try to explain a little bit. The result is any tangible or intangible output of the action, such as data, knowledge, and information, whatever their form or nature, whether or not they can be protected. Key exploitable results are the output generated during the project, which can be used and create impact, either by the project partners or by other stakeholders. Project result can be reusable, exploitable, like invention, prototype services, as such, or element, knowledge, technology, processes, network that have potential to contribute for further work on research innovation. You see, this is what your result is supposed to generate. So still on the definition, after you have the result, I just said what is the next. So you have 2 or 3 tasks after you have generated your result: communicating your result, disseminating your result, or exploiting your result. What is communication? We all know that communication is just taking strategic and targeted measures for promoting the action itself and its result to a multitude audience, including the media, the public, possibly engaging a two-way exchange, etc. So in this part, you have reached the society as a whole, demonstrate how funding contribute to tackling societal challenges, strategical plan, etc. For dissemination, this is another part where generally scientists insist on disseminating the result. This is a point where, through my experience in West and Central Africa, people focus, researchers mostly focus on disseminating, and the exploitation is not developed as such. Like the public disclosure of result by appropriate means other than resulting from protecting or exploiting the result, circulation and knowledge and result to the ones that can best make use of them, enabling the value of result to be potential wider than the original focus. I was last week I was talking in the science in the South, and I was saying that it was about sharing, that data sharing and data management, how to say, protecting personal data, etc. So I would think that circulating of knowledge and result to the ones that can best make use of them. This is a serious issue in it is in our universities, in our institution. This sharing knowledge is a serious issue, because if you go to the universities and to the libraries, you will see many documents that have been produced years ago, but are still not published. You cannot have access to them, so they are not shared. And so it is a big issue in this university. Enabling the value of result to be potentially wider than the original focus. If you don't share your data, how can we exploit your data in a way that it can be more beneficial to the society, to the population, to the scientific community, to innovation? So you have to share. If you don't disseminate, your data cannot produce such a result. Essential element of all good research practice and vital part of the project plan. Disseminating your results should be part of your project plan. You have to plan it even before starting your project. Like you can do what we say halfway publication. If you conduct your research and you find that the results are so interesting, within 6 months or 1 year, you can produce a paper, you can produce a report, you can do many things. You see what happened in clinical trials. When they conduct the study within 6 months, and they see that there are so many side effects, they just stop. They analyze the result and they see that this cannot continue, and they stop it. So if they see very high benefits, they show the result, and instead of going the whole time frame, they skip some step and they go for the best. So you see how dissemination can help. Now, talking about exploitation, which is the point on which we are going to focus on this presentation. Exploitation is the use of result in further research and innovation activities, include, among others, commercial exploitation, such as developing, creating, manufacturing, marketing, a product process. Those who are in digital science, they really know this. Creating, providing services or standardization and policy making activities. Recognize exploitable results and their stakeholders identify the value added from their use. Partners can exploit their result or let them be exploited by interested third party. So this is the aspect we are developing in this module. So the learning aims is to help you master the legal framework of research project, like the different type of contract, important legal elements, and to raise awareness and intellectual property and data protection. So this is the module 7, the one before the last one. So the content learning are research contract, intellectual property, and data sharing. So let's go straight to the research contract. What is a research contract? Sorry, so by definition, on the article of the French Civil Code, it says that a contract is an agreement of wealth between two or more persons intended to create, modify, transmit, or terminate obligation. I am receiving some hand raising. Good morning. Thank you for your excellent presentation. I will be glad if you could send me the.
Yes, I am responding online, Mamadou.
Okay, okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. So those who raise your hands, you can also write your message using the Q&R, so we can answer directly. So yes, so what is a contract? According to the French Civil Code, it says that the contract is an agreement of wills between two or more persons intended to create, modify, transmit, or terminate obligation. Condition of validity of a contract mean that did the party intend to enter into a contract with its other? This involve verifying their consent, meaning that those who contract or engage in a contract have to provide their consent before the contract can be valid. If there is no consent, one consent miss, or the parties do not provide their consent agreement, then the validity, the condition of the contract is no longer valid, because it depends on their agreement before to make the contract valid. So the capacity of the parties. Were the parties under a restriction of capacity? This involved, for example, checking whether they were minors or subject to protective measure. Again, here you have generated your result, and your results are very precious. They can produce a lot. You know today that many startups are going to be set up by small group, by students, by researchers, just based on result from the field. So when you get your result and you find that the results are very interesting, they can serve to innovation and so on, you need to protect your result. And in that case is when you are engaging in contract, make sure that you check everything correctly, everything is really right and done. You will see we talk about legal, because some of these aspects need jurisdiction. So this involved checking whether they were minors or subject to protective measure. A legal and certain content. What did the parties intend when they enter into the contract? This involved ascertaining the purpose of their commitment. So this has to be ascertained before even they enter, they collaborate, they start working together. Pursuit of goal consistent with public order. Why did the parties want to contract? This implies verifying the existence of a benefit in return for the parties' commitment. So you can go for a contract for many reasons. First, for example, you do not have the technology and you want to have a training. You may have the technology and you want something in return, or you would train your you have some members you would like to train. You have something in return when you enter in contract. All these has to be specified in the contract before you start collaborating. So here, what the different type of the type of research contract in here, you have three types. We show you three types. Maybe there might be more, but these are the most commonly seen. The research contract, the research collaboration contract, and non-disclosure agreement. What is the research contract? There is, in a research contract, there is a partner agreement. Might be financial support is offered to a researcher or researchers from one or more institutions to carry out research in a particular field under specific arrangement, in that case. So a research collaboration contract is to define the modalities of collaboration between the parties for the joint implementation of a study. This here you have joint implementation of a study. In the non-disclosure agreement, you have any information disclosed by the sponsor, the institution, and the investigation in connection with the study. Example, table secret or trade secrets belonging to the sponsor. Why was this agreement made? The disclosure of a confidential information could be damaging to their policies for the protection and enhancement and exploitation of their respective intellectual assets. You know, the pharmaceutical companies, the industry, you know, they exploit the result. Or even the IT, the digital science, they also use this result to innovate new software. They do they can conceive new medicine, etc. So in this part, when you disclose some information, you may harm, or you may affect negatively their profit, their activities, or their publication, or something related to that. So in the contract, the disclosure of the confidential information could be damaging. So you should not disclosure. And in the contract, it is mentioned you may not disclosure, or he may not, or one part of the contract members agreement do not have not the right to disclosure any information related to the result of the research, or the reason why they enter in contract. Yesterday we talked also about consortium, but in the consortium agreement for implementation of specific project, the agreement aimed to, in this consortium, the agreement aimed to define the term and condition for the execution of the project, establish the rules for the devolution of the intellectual property of the foreground, establish the general condition for the industrial and commercial exploitation of the own and new knowledge. So in a hosting agreement for doctoral student, for example, I think you guys have been traveling to visit some lab, or you have been staying there for 6 months or for 3 months. Anyway, in that case, the convention aimed to define the term and condition of scientific collaboration between the parties for the completion of the PhD student thesis. So when you go to visit the lab and you have some experiment to do, you don't pay the reagents. Sometimes you don't pay. Sometimes you carry with you the material, the sample you will analyze. But once you get there, you don't pay using the machine. You're using the machine. You don't pay for that, because it is included in the agreement. So maybe you have access to different type of computer software that can help you analyze, do stuff, training. You don't pay. This is in the agreement between the two parties. It's also to establish the term and condition for hosting the PhD student in on the premise of the hosting organization. In the institutional agreement now, object of the agreement can be the purpose of the agreement, contract, convention, for example. Exchange and use of confidential information, carrying out a research project by the university, transfer and use of material, etc. In the research subject, for example, principal investigator and co-investigator, what do they do? The title of the project and identification of researchers in charge. So here you will have the name, the title, the department. And other definition is defining the key words specific to the contract. Ensure that the parties have the same understanding of the keyword. We should not interpret word differently. We have the same understanding of what is in the contract, so that no one can break the rules, and no one can, for example, when you're having a wonderful result, everyone would like to be part of the paper that you will publish. And in that case, you have so many competition. And when you have to publish, they will ask you, is there conflict of interest? All these enter in such a situation. So you have to already plan about that before you enter in the contract. Who will be the first author? Who will be the second? Who have the corresponding author? Who will have the data? Is it the funder? Is it the institution? Is it who have the right on the data exploitation? All these is mentioned in the agreement. So still in the institutional agreement, we will talk also about privacy, which is important to protect confidential information of the researcher, the university, and so on, and partners. So the responsibility for protecting confidential information lies with the researcher. And that's why you see access to data is very restricted. And you see, while collecting your data, you sometimes even do not mention the name, the contacts of the number of the participant. You just have some ID numbers, but no name. So limit the number of people who will have access to this information. Again, even before we talk about personal data sharing, data are very, very, how to say, very, the word, I'm missing the word I would like to use, just to say it's confidential. They have to be protected. You cannot play with people's data, personal data. You cannot play with that. So clearly it has to limit the number. So in the agreement, you will have to limit the number of people who will have access to this information. Clearly also define the nature of the confidential information. What is confidential information? What is not confidential information, so that you know how you exploit your data. So when we talk also the confidentiality clause, the confidentiality, it should the clause should always include exception, so that it is not considered confidential. So for example, information known to the party to whom it is disclosed, information that has become public knowledge through no wrongful act of the party receiving the information. Information obtained from third parties who are not bound to maintain confidentiality by the contracting parties. Information which the law required to be disclosed. So hopefully you will have, I wish you will have a project and you will have to be engaged in this one so that you will understand how confidential are personal data, how confidential are the results, how confidential are everything result from your research project. Still in the institutional agreement, we will talk about the financing and payment method. So, you know, also, as I said, I think the day before, the financing and the payment are also guided by the how to say, by the funder, the donor himself, but also we in your agreement, in the institutional agreement, there is also how to say, clause that can define or specify how the funding and payment will be made. So the maximum amount of funding, for example, the term of payment and the timing of payment should be clearly set out in the agreement. So you will not go to Morocco to do your test and the payment comes months after you go. Where are you getting the money to pay? Or you go, they ask you to pay and then they reimburse you. Where are you taking this money? So all this has to be clearly mentioned before you start. So if a funding partner wants to report to be to their liking before they make it their contribution, it is very important that the desired content of the report is clearly defined in the contract, and that the time the partner has to review the report is very specified, is clearly specified. So if the partner has not provided written comments by the deadline, the report should be deemed to be accepted. Again, before you make mistake and think you did not accept, or you have, and the other part consider you have already accepted, be very clear and answer on time. When you are engaging in a project, in an agreement, please spare your time for that purpose so that nothing comes back, I mean, you don't miss anything. Otherwise, they will consider you have accepted and you consider you haven't accepted since you haven't given your view. So the other aspect that you will have in the institutional agreement is the financial and scientific and financial report. It should specify whether specific scientific progress report will be requested. Also specify the frequency and deadline for this proposal. So it is quite common for the partner to ask the university to submit annual audit statement of expenditure, as well as final report of contribution expenditure made in the framework of the project. So get ready when you have when you're answering to a call, you should be prepared for that. But because most of the donors will ask you to make a report, they would like to know how you have spent the money. When they would like to know, even though, you know, you remember in the previous presentation, we showed you how you can, in the objective, we show you how to justify the money you have spent. But still, you will have to write a report, you will join some papers, some receipt you have paid, and so on. So get ready to that when you're submitting or when you have funding from a donor. Yes, now we come to the intellectual property. Intellectual property, when we talk about it, there is a lot of conflict on the intellectual property. is the intellectual property, is the property, the result, is it for you, your student who has conducted the experiment, who has found out this bright solution that everyone would like to use? Or is it for your institution, your university? Or is it for the donor who funded the project? Many questions. So just to come to summarize a little bit, there are a lot of information on intellectual property. You can, after this course, you can read a little bit to better understand. But in this case, in the institutional agreement, the definition of the term intellectual property should be clear, defined, like define the prior intellectual property owned by one party that will be used in the project. Mention when IP arising from the project can be considered joint. So intellectual property arising from the research project is usually owned by the university. Data are not yours, they are the university. Remember, the university accepted you to conduct your study in this institution under his cover. If you have any problem, the university covers you. So you cannot, you have the data are not yours, they are your institution. So in some cases, the IP may be joint, provided that the parties claiming ownership have made an inventive scientific contribution to the creation of the IP. For example, you see many researchers who win the Nobel Prize. They say, yeah, he was a student of Harvard. Yes, he is Indian. He was a student of Harvard. What is the matter? Just because Harvard want to show that the students have been there and Harvard has contributed to this education only. This helped the reputation of Harvard University. So just a small example like that, but you will have many other examples on the intellectual properties. So now we go to the dissemination, as I said, the publication. So the university must always reserve the right to publish research results. The university must always take adequate measure to protect intellectual property before publishing the result. So usually when you have a very interesting result, you may not immediately publish. The university can say, no, this is for innovation, and we cannot give it to someone else the opportunity, the right to use it. So you don't publish this. And even sometimes when you defend your thesis, it's restricted. It's not all the public that that is allowed to assist to your presentation, just because your results are so interesting that they don't want it to be disseminated. So your thesis, when you defend your thesis, is restricted, and the report and so on. So that there are many protections that go around your result. So the publication right of student dissertation and thesis must be strictly preserved. So in the majority of cases, however, partners who fund the project or provide the materials require a right of first review of any proposed disclosure of project results. So you see, of course, the university always have the right to publish, but in majority cases, partner who would also would like to have something from the break. They have also the right is intended to give the partner opportunity to identify potential patentable. You will see what is patentable result, and to ensure that the information disclosed does not constitute confidential information. So in this agreement, you will have all these checked out and made clear and sure and understandable for both parties before the project will start. Still in the institutional agreement, we will include the equipment unless agreed otherwise. The university retain ownership of equipment purchased for a research project. So when you're conducting your research in a university, Everything you paid at the university is for the university or for the lab where you have work, institution where you have work. Most of the material are for them, it's not for you. They are also guarantee liability and compensation. So consult a lawyer who can confirm whether the proposed clause is acceptable or not. So we have talked about jurisdiction, and you know, when it comes to now sharing, where there is benefits, there is you know how much the COVID vaccine has cost to Pfizer, to AstraZeneca, to I don't know, to China, etc. They made a lot of money, but who give them this information? Chinese at a certain point, they sequenced the genome of the coronavirus and they share it on virology.org. When you go to virology.org, you see the sequences. As soon as you know the sequence of a pathogen, you can do everything you want, because you can synthesize the genome if you want, and you can make a vaccine right away. You can make some antibodies, some sequences, you know the region of the virus, you know everything related to the virus, and you can conceive, you can design yourself some part protein of the virus and make a vaccine. But if the Chinese did not share this information, how can they conceive, how can they design the vaccine? Of course, they could not, unless they had patients who are sick in the state, in the United States or in Europe. Unless they have the patient there, they could not do that. And even though if they had patient in their country, if they did not have the machinery that can help them sequence the virus, then they will not be able to recognize the virus protein, the virus genome, and then think about producing antibodies, testing, etc. So you see how information result from your project are very interesting, and they can be used for the benefits of the population. So the duration will also be included. The start and the end, the start and end date of the contract must be clearly stated. So the jurisdiction here, in case where the university is responsible for a research project that is the subject of agreement, the law governing the agreement should be that of the, yes, that of the country hosting the institution, that of the country hosting the institution. In the case of inter-institutional agreement, the agreement is usually governed by laws of the country of institution responsible for the project. Why here it is governed by law of the country? Because they would not like the strongest institution to take the result or to take profit from the result and leaving the other not profiting from the result. That's why, so when there are two agreements, there are possibility of conflict, there is always a third part that can judge. The amendment to the contract, it is to approve by sorry, so it's to approve by amendment to contract any changes to the contract or research work. It also have to specify whether it is permissible to subcontract part of the work end. And subcontract, what we mean by subcontract, you have an agreement, you sign the contract with a partner, but this partner may not have all the skills that you will need to conduct the project, but it has another contract, another partner who can be, who has the skills or the knowledge or whatever you want that can help you. So can he subcontract with that other part in order to fulfill his duties and responsibilities? So it will also specify where the part of the work may be subcontracted, and if so, what maximum portion of the budget may be allocated to the subcontractor. All this has to be in the agreement. Termination now. This section sets out the ground for termination and the procedures for its application, if applicable. In all cases of termination, it is important to ensure that the financial partner undertakes to assume all expenses incurred and committed at the date of termination. Yes, condition of termination should be clearly mentioned, and before termination, you know, I think yesterday or day before yesterday, one of our participants were asking if one partner decide to terminate before the project is over, what to do. So all this should be mentioned in the agreement, so that before, if he terminate, there are some aspects that he may not have access, or you just clearly mention. If you terminate before the project is over, or before what you are supposed to do is over, you will not get payment, or you will not participate in the result, in the publication, and so on. So all these should be mentioned in the agreement, in the institutional agreement. Notice that it's important to enter the correct detail of the representative of authorized by the parties and to the contract. Sorry. I'm having what? Okay. So the contract documents in here, we just mentioned some, but there might be more. A detailed description of the work. In the contract, you will have to describe in detail the work that each party will have to conduct. The timetable, you will not have we will not give you a work and let you do what you want. We will give you a time frame where you will have to accomplish it. You have also a budget that is allocated to this action. So yes, I don't know, we arrived at the part B, the intellectual property. We were talking now about the agreement. Can we take some questions before we continue, or you want we continue?
Sorry, Mamadou, you want to take some questions from here?
Yes, if possible, if we have many questions, maybe we can take some questions and
we
continue.
have
Otherwise, we can continue and then take questions later.
I think we can have since we almost did 45 minutes, so we can have maybe 3 questions. So there is one question in the chat. In case of violation of the contract policy signed, maybe not deliberate by the beneficiary, what might be the likely consequences?
Thank you very much. Yeah, this is things that that is expected to happen, because it's a contractor while writing the contract, its contractor engage himself to conduct its part correctly and in a time frame. What happened now is something happened which is as you said, not deliberate. In that case, I think there is a discussion between the two, and they will find a new agreement that will take into account. That's one. I mean, this challenge. They may discuss together. Again, they must keep discussing all the time. There are always weekly meetings or bi-weekly meetings or monthly meeting to monitor and to know what is happening in the field, how the project is moving. It's not just we give you, you keep working, nobody know what you're doing. No, there are always frequent exchanges between the partners on the project, how it works. So when there are shortcomings like this, the contractor will immediately inform the other part that we are having these issues, and this may affect our ability to conduct this our side. It might be have affected negatively our activities. So what can we do? Then in that case, they can sit down and see how they can solve the solution. If it was agreed, they can find also another way. Maybe they can subcontract, maybe they can have other possibilities, but this is to decide collectively, not in individual. Gaoussou, maybe you have an experience with this question?
Yes, sure, but the most important is the clauses that are defined in the contract on how to resolve these kind of violations. But usually it is always mentioned that you know, you will find a friendly solution. So there is no fixed way in the contract to resolve the problem, but you can discuss with the partner or the beneficiary on how to manage this, on how to resolve these issues friendly. This is my main advice is always to find a way to resolve it friendly, and then if it is not possible, it is always always mention it in the contract that you will refer to the legal you know, unit that is relevant for this kind of problem. And we have another question, Mamadou. What type of intellectual property agreement would you like to recommend when publishing research results by the university? I would like to propose maybe for the next two questions to wait for the part B, because we will be talking a lot about intellectual property in the next subsection. Yeah. Maybe it could be redundant to respond to this question. Maybe they will find their answer on this question. So I will monitor it. If the answer is not given, so I will give you back the two questions, because there is also another question from Emmanuel Liada from Uganda, also asking about, you know, can you help to highlight on a kind of problem he had on IP policies in academic institution. But let's see the next one. So there is, okay, there is another question from Fatoumata Sek. So this one is related to the contract. Please, is there a kind of predefined contract agreement and policies like a roadmap which can be adapted for each one? I don't know, Mamadou, if you get the question.
Yeah. We continue the second part, so they have the
there is a question
and then answer to the question.
Yeah, this question, please. This question from Fatu is, please, is there a kind of predefined contract agreement and policies like a roadmap which can be adapted by each one?
Okay, so is there any a kind of predefined contract agreement and policies?
A universal template.
Yeah. You can have I may not be, there is a universal template of contract agreement and policies. Because you know what, the reason why you enter in contract is specific, is not general, it's specific to you. So you can have you can read the contract between other contractors in other projects. You can read them to have information on the reason for contracting and what were the policy. What were the policies of this in this contract, but yours is your own and it's specific to your project. It's specific to your reason for contracting. So a kind of predefined, I cannot say yes, but I didn't see before. I didn't see up to now a predefined contract agreement and policies that can be like a roadmap. I didn't see. I don't say that it doesn't exist, but I didn't see. What do you think about Gaoussou? Is there any predefined?
No, no, not a universal template, but every funding body usually have a predefined contract. For example, French development agencies or European Union or World Bank or IRDC. These funding bodies have predefined contracts, and sometimes this proposed contract can be discussed, but not all the parts. You have sometimes the general disposition of the contract, so you cannot maybe as a beneficiary of the project to change, but there are sometimes some specific dispositions, so you can adapt or you can discuss, you know, in with your funding body. So for me, my response is there is no universal template or roadmap, but for some specific funding body, they have their own contract agreement or agreement model. Okay, Mamadou, maybe a question from Redmi, who raised the hand. So let's take one question from Redmi. Yep.
Yeah, Redmi, I think you have muted your microphone. Can you unmute your microphone? We're not hearing you.
Okay, not here. So let's continue, Mamadou, in the second part.
Yeah, okay. So let's continue. I think you will have more information to your question. Maybe you will even have your answers. So now we have talked about your result. We have talked about communication. We have talked about dissemination, the way you disseminate your result. We have talked about exploitation, and we have talked about the agreement that can cover this exploitation, contracting. Before you exploit, you have to make a lot of agreement between institution, the property, the data on the property, on the result, on the data, on the all aspects that enter to the production of your result. Now let's go to talk about intellectual property itself. What is it? So what is intellectual property? It is the entire body of exclusive rights granted to intellectual creation. So exclusive right granted to intellectual creation. What creation are considered here? Why protect? How should they be protected? Question that you have to think about before even you start your project. So what is it? The patent. What is the patent? It's a technical solution to a technical problem, meaning that product or process, and either a product or a process. A product means the result, the end result. The process is the process to help you achieve something. And innovation, it's a state of art. It's an inventive step, not immediately deducible by a person skilled in the art. Is an inventive step here, susceptible of industrial application. It might be reproducible and business generated. Feeling at an ORP. ORP means the West African intellectual property, or at the structure in charge of registering IP titles, 12 months to obtain registration. It offers its holder right and obligation for 20 years. When you have this license, when you have this patent, it offers you right and obligation for 20 years. But after 20 years, it can be shared. You can still have the right, but your right will be shared to others. So filing procedure here. So I write down African intellectual property for OAPI or AIPO. So the patent, the ORP or OAPI grant for patents of innovation, decision number, okay, you can see that any university or institute or research center established on the territory of the OAPI member state which so request shall benefit from a subsidy of 50% of the filling and research report fees. That shall be 50% of the said fees. A little bit technical. If you're not inside, you may be confused, but it's very, very simple. The annual fees from the 2nd to the 10th year are also subsidized at 50% for universities, research centers, and institutes established on the territory of one of the ORP member states. For example, here they show you in this table, subject holder of an invention. You have the ordinary filler, you have the university, institute, research center, and you have the deposit taxes, the postage registration, and the annual fees. So for ordinary filler, for example, you have 225,000, and for registration, you have 5,000, and for the 2nd to the 5th year, 220,000. For the 6th to the 10th year, you have 375,000. So these taxes may change with the entry into force of a new Bangui agreement. Bangui is Central Africa. This institution is based on I think at Bangui, I think. I don't remember their office, but I think they're based at Bangui, or they have annual meeting at Bangui where they can also revise or update some of these agreements. The brand, we talked about the patent, we talked about, sorry, I don't see that. Sorry. We talked about the patent, and now we talk about the brand. What is the brand? It is a distinctive sign that can be reproduced graphically and serve to distinguish a service or a product of a natural or legal person from those of its competitors. So the brand is what you can see generally when you buy a product. The brand is the envelope, if you want, of the product itself. The product can be white, blue, red, but the brand can, when you see the brand, you immediately think to the company that produced this product. So NICE international classification, NICE international classification, there are 34 classes of goods and 11 of services. So filling at the OAPI or commercial code for some state, admissibility criteria issued 6 months after filling, and so right and obligation suitable for business startup marketing of the product. So for the brand, these are some aspects that you that involved in the brand, that are involved in the brand. So for the design and models, you have ornamental design, the shape, not style, the visible and not invisible, the ideas or the method, ornament, print, some 2D drawings, if reproducible. Filling at the OAP novelty and originately proper characters. So here you have the Coca-Cola, sorry for pronouncing the name, but anyway, you see them, so you know. But you see how you see the bottles, they're quite different, and you see like each shape, maybe the last one is maybe the most beautiful, or the one people think is better, they like more, they like best. So you choose the the design which can help you sell the more. The design is the attractive part of this aspect. So granted, the creator title valid for 5 years, renewable twice, meaning 15 years, same right and obligation as the IP titles, except the obligation to exploit. For the copyright now, protects work of the mind, songs, table, software, scientific book, publication, database, etc. So for the copyright, you see it involves how to say distinct original, meaning that it is as distinct from pre-existing work or work bearing the author's personality, and not the ideas. It's not the idea, it's what you have produced, of course. The right arises at the moment of creating, not need to deposit a title. Proof of anteriority, depose a manuscript with copyright management organization or notary, etc. So create two types of right: moral right, patrimonial right. When we talk about moral right, we remain the author forever. If you write your name and all, or you write on the book, or you write your article, so it helps the memory right. So for the patrimonial right now, is licensing, sitting up to session up to 70 to 99 years, depending on the legislation. For example, I don't want to name the person, but there is a guy who has built up a very big statue in a country or in a city, and this status is considered as a touristic place. So people come to visit there and pay money. This money goes to that person. He says he can have like 25% for the benefits of the visits, or he can have 10% for 10 years, for 20 years, for 7 to 9 years. It depends. Always in the keeping with the copyright, there is general principle applicable to creation by employees, whether civil servant or contract workers. Holder differs depending on the type of creation. Is it intellectual work? Is it case of software, database, or collective work, or patents and design? It also depends on the type of relationship: employment contract with inventive mission, employment contract without inventive mission. Is it public servant? Is it private? Is it other training? Is it the PhD? So the case of work of mine now, the rule is that moral right to the author regardless to the future of the relationship. Automatic transfer of economic right to the company if not commercially exploited. Preferential right for commercial exploitation except for software produced as part as an assignment. Collective work. Software produced as a part of an assignment. When you produce a software for during your assignment, of course it's an assignment, but if you didn't do the assignment, maybe you will not produce the software. But anyway, so in that case, it's not part of it. So keeping in the copyright, still you have here a chart: collective work versus collaborative work. When it's the definition of collective and collaborative, who is the right holder, who has the right to exploit the work, etc. So collaborative work means several people contribute to creation of the work, and in a collaboration, they collaborate to work to conduct this work and to find out this result that can be exploited. There is collective work, which is initiative, editing, publication, disclosure, natural or legal person who does so under his or her direction and name, difficult to attribute each of the person who participate in the competition, a distinct right to the work produced, like dictionaries, encyclopedias, newspaper, etc. So the right holder for the collaborative work is contributors. For a collective work, natural or legal person under whose name the work is disclosed. For the exploitation now of the work, decision must be taken. In the case of collaborative work, decision must be taken unanimously, where the author contribution are of different genre. Example, text and illustration. Each co-author may use their own contribution separately. That's why if you have some articles, you see some paper journals will ask what is the contribution of each author. And after you write the acknowledgement of your paper, you see each author has contributed to the study design, data analysis, drafting the paper, translating in English, and so on. Each one has his role mentioned on the paper. So for the collective work now, the natural or legal person holding the right. Keeping in the copyright, comparison with intellectual property titles, case of patentable invention and DMI. Public or private agent are in equal situation. Moral right, name of the inventor, the type of relationship will be considered on assignment, off assignment, attributable or no attributable. In the case of doctoral student, student creation, it depends on the kind of work, depend on also the type of relationship. So we come here to the students creation. You have the student user of the service, maybe employee, scholarship holder, intern without any specific status. When it's employee, you have mission, non-mission intervention regime. When it's a scholarship holder, you have the scholarship holder assimilated to an employee. The scholarship holder is assimilated as an employee. If it's yes, then it enters in mission, non-mission intervention regime. If it's no, the student owner or co-owner. If he's not considered as an employee, then it enters into student owner or co-owner. But if it enters in scholarship employee now, then it's entered on mission, non-mission intervention regime. So when it's an intern now, intern is assimilated as an employee. Simply, generally, intern are assimilated as employees, and it will enter in that case in mission, non-mission intervention regime. It can, if no, when the intern is considered as a non-employee, then it enter in the student owner or co-owner. When now it's without specific status, in that case, it enters in the student owner or co-owner. In the seventh part, we still talk about the so the copyright of these theses and dissertation. So all theses, all student studies and dissertation, as well as work derived from them, publication, scientific communication, are considered to be intellectual work exempted under teaching. So therefore, students own the copyright of their work, subject to granting of a license free of charge to institution. So students usually have the right to publish their thesis and dissertation unless they have agreed with writing the previous excluding or differing publication. So the free license granted by the author, meaning students, to the research institute is unconditional, irrevocable, perpetual, transferable, and non-exclusive, authorizing it to make available use and copy these theses or dissertation for academic or administration purposes. The license remains valid if the author leaves the research institute or the university. So meaning when you did a great job in your institution and you decide to leave and you previously have your license, this license, it remains valid wherever you go with it. Still, the research institute or university is in most situations require copies of thesis or dissertation to be deposited in its library. This I think we all did this before you defend your thesis. They ask you first to deposit your in the library, and the library will give you a receipt that can show you have deposit. Then with this receipt you can defend now your thesis. So you know the data are not yours, your results are not yours, it's for your institution. So in the case of proposed patent application in respect of an invention disclosed in a thesis or dissertation, regardless of the right holder, external examiner must sign a non-disclosure agreement before thesis or dissertation is sent to them. Yes, you know, before you defend your thesis, they will ask you to send your thesis to external examiner who will read and approve your dissertation. These guys will find out the strength, the weakness of your thesis, what can you improve, what can you detail, where are the challenges you met, how they can give you a lot of comments that can help you improve your thesis. Before you send the copies to these examiners, they have to sign an agreement that they will not disclose the result they see in the dissertation, and they will not use them neither. Software now. What is a software? Our professor will come to help. A software is written in general purpose, a character written in a general purpose programming language, has a number of similarities to the human language, compiled in machine code to enable the computer to execute them. This is what we call a software. What is the purpose? Produce a particular result when run on a computer. Yes. So what is a software license? A software is license, of course, is a contract by which the owner of the copyright in a computer program defined with its co-contractor, operator, or user, the condition under which this program can be used, distributed, modified. What is a classical software license? What is a free open source software license? So I'm not very at the software, but I think we have a very good company who will assist us to this definition if you have any question. Computer program is series of instructions, but like if you have your so here we have an example. I think this is a CPU. We all know in our computer we have a CPU, we have E-core 5, I don't know, 7, etc. Now I think the highest is a 7 and the fastest one. But before you have Intel Core, you had the SMD and so on. So I'm not familiar. Don't pay attention to that. I just give comments. So traditional or private licensing scheme provide a copy of the software on the restrictive condition, specific condition in their license agreement. The most common ones imposed on the license. So the use of the license may be allowed to use the software for certain specific purposes, only, for example, for internal research and development, or personal use only, to the exclusion of all the other purposes, example, sub-licensing, or for commercial purposes. Like example, if you buy Word software, Word the package, the Word package, they will no, the Office package. Yes, I think the word office package. If you pay it, they will Microsoft will tell you that you cannot sell it to someone else. You can only use it for your own computer, or for one computer or maximum 3 computers, not more. And you cannot sell it. You don't have the right to sell it. So this is an example. So number of users or a CPU, the licensee may be authorized to make the software available to a limited number of users only, or to run it on a limited number of processors. Yes. You also have the replication. Licensee may only be allowed to make a copy of the software for backup or security purposes. Transfer licensee may be prohibited from passing on the software or the license to a third party so that they cannot resell it again. Yeah, the case of software, you have free software, open source, very broad authorization in terms of use. Yeah, so there are many software now you can download from the internet and use it. Like if you can use APM4 for your statistics. You have also SPSS, you have RStudio, you have a lot of software you can use which are free of use. You have the freedom to run the program for any purposes, freedom to study how to program work and adapt it on one's need. There are many online software you can use now to do a lot of stuff if you want to train yourself. Open source initiative, extension of the 4 freedom in 98, extension of freedom to access source code, then the term free software license or open source software license. Therefore, in any context, the term FOOS covers both free software license as well as open source software license. Definition of a license agreement is contract by which the owner of an intellectual property right, the licensor authorized his co-contractor, the license, to exploit this right accordingly to the term and condition defined by the parties. For example, you're working in your lab, in your team, you do not have a computer program that can help you execute a certain program. When you go to another lab, you can have the chance to have these possibilities where the license there is agreement with the I mean, they have agreement with the licensor to exploit, to use this program. I remember when I was at Harvard, there are some labs, they did not have some program that they can use to conduct the meta-analysis. But there are some labs, specifically in the biostatistics and epidemiology, they had a lot of software we could use to execute our task, like the meta-analysis software at that time. Formalism and formalities, written contract, condition of validity, contract, patent, trademark, copyright, sanction, nullity, registration in the National Register of Patent, Trademark, Design, etc. No condition of validity, condition of enforceability, again, third party, etc. For parties, you have a licensor, you have licensee, you have legal capacity to be verified, including legal capacity to bind to its name, check the existence of the structure, check its financial bias, etc. For the title now, you have seen in practice that patent, license plus skills, license, communication, skills, transfer, copyright, software, license. Implication include a title which is not binding on the judge beware of classification and indication of the party's intention. Preamble, an optional but essential element which places the agreement technology in context, highlight the intention, an essential clue for the judge in the event and dispute. So you have other definition in the interest of the definition, like avoid divergent interpretation, highlight key point. I remind you that we said that all contractors should be clear on the keyword used. We should not interpret differently the word we have in our contract. So they might be clear. Always read the definition against the articles in which they are used. Definition can be written. For the annexes, we have they are an integral part of the contract. Same legal value delimit the contractual scope, facilitate the drafting and evolution of the contract, enable a precise description of the licensing. So a point to consider is it is recommended that you regularly consider updating the annexes. Example of an annex, the license object, the patent, title, designation, filling date, publication, etc. So the objective of the license is the purpose of the contract, what the license is based on, a granted patent or a patent application, the author's patrimonial right, expertise, brand, all or a part of the right, like the license to use, manufacture, market, etc. The expertise now, the expertise in the legal sense is very precise. The expertise has to be secret, formalized, substantial. If one of these conditions is not met, nullity of the contract, equal nullity. A license cannot not specify, it cannot not be secret, it cannot not be formalized, it cannot not be substantial. If one of these is missing, then it's null. So the scope of the contract, geographical area, field application, exclusivity right, or not to sub-license. Note that is absolutely absolute exclusivity exists when the licensor prohibits himself from using the technology. Duration of the contract also has to be mentioned, effective from the day of the signature, fixed term, renewable for more entire life, for the entire life of the licensed title, for the operation, duty to operate, effective serious exploitation, even in the contract is, even if the contract is silent, even if there is a minimum clause. Universities specify definition of area of use, reservation of the out of domain, provide the sanction in case of non-exploitation. So still in the assignment contract, main clause include the monitoring of operation, why, mission of research to guarantee financial return, to recover technology, and how, reporting annual meeting, audit, hierarchy of sanction, etc. For the financial condition, you have the lump sum, cash on signing the license, lump of payment of each anniversary date, payment schedule, etc. For the fees, you have various fees depending on the type of product, operation, market. Also variable fees by tranches, cumulative amounts, or in the basis turnover, unit of production, etc. So it also include among the clause the intellectual property management, title renewal, coverage of IP cost, reimbursement, coverage of future costs, etc. So you have also the management, which include who decide, who pays, what happens in case. the IP defense, defending IP right, who can act? The owner of the IP, the exclusive licensee, or the non-exclusive licensee. For the warranty now, of course, when you pay something, a computer, they will have, you have 2 years warranty, 6 months, or any other, especially in the digital science field, you have a lot of IP. You have a lot of, you can have the possibility to have warranties. So warranty of eviction due to personal act, warranty of eviction due to third party, warranty of a hidden effect, or can be set aside in the contract. So be attention. The first defense is attack. Yeah, this is when you're in martial art. The best way to defend is to attack. When the attack, when one attack a third party for infringement, he will question the validity of the title. Danger, is it better to provide that license does not have that the licensee? Is it better to provide that the licensee does not have the right to act in infringement against third party without the licensor authorization? Be cautious about that. So applicable law now, applicable preferred national law, foreign law, relativity, harmonized except the US and US law. For the language, prefer French, English, or other language, of course, the other official language. Conflict of management, out of court agreement, avoid resorting arbitration. So also the monitoring of the license is the importance. It is the importance to follow the life of the license. It is also recommended that the license be reviewed every 6 months. Depending on the audit clause in the license agreement, plan to ask the licensee about the state of sale. It is also recommended to monitor the minimum in order to be able to modify the terms. So for the licensee, it is important to maintain a close relationship with the licensee. If possible, plan 1 physical meeting per year. Important to keep the license informed of any changes in contact person. So other definition, the assignment here must be analyzed as a sale. It does not concern the invention, but the title, meaning the pattern and the exclusive right. The extent may be total or partial. The inventor name remains on the patent. Still in the main clause, we will talk about retention of property, late payment penalty. What will happen if you have late payment? Any sum not paid by the assignee within the mentioned deadlines will give rise to interest on late payment. Priority right. This is extension of patent protection abroad based on the date and condition of the first filing. So you also have condition to benefit from the priority right, like priority must be claimed, patent application to benefit from priority must be filled within 12 months from the filing the patent application whose priority is claimed. So the preemptive right, you have the legal or contractual right, you have the granted to private or public person to acquire property in priority to any other person, conditioned by existence of a declaration of intention to dispose of or sell. So you also have the identification of assigned right, which include to produce it and or to represent it and or to use and distribute it and or to modify, adapt, translate, add to or delete from it, and also or to incorporate in a whole or in part to any pre-existing or future work. So you have also the mode of exploitation, the assigned right, which are exclusive or non-exclusive, the remuneration, receive a share of a few percent of the revenue from the exploitation or sale of the work, calculated on the basis of the public sale prices, etc. So in part D, we'll talk
Yes,
about
Mamadou.
Yes.
Maybe we can have one or two questions.
Okay. Yes.
I lost my internet connection, so some of the questions on the Q&A disappeared in my chat box. So could you take a look at the Q&A and see? I left the 3 questions.
What type of intellectual property agreement? Okay, I have. In case of violation, thanks for
Yeah, this one is already
okay.
answered.
Can you help to highlight on it in regard to who owns the IP, please, sir? Okay, so in regard to the intellectual property in the institution, during my research, I came across IP policies in academic institution. Can you help to highlight on it in regard to who owns the IP? Okay, so I think you have had the answer through this presentation in the part B. You have seen that the intellectual property first when you're a student, when you're engaged as a student, then it's not for you. But when you're not engaged as a student, then you're owner or co-owner. And when you're in how to say, I can come back to the slide so you can see it. Yes, this slide. So here you have the creation to answer to your question. When you are an employee, what you find is is classified as in mission or non-in mission intervention regime. It's classified in this regime. When you're now a scholarship holder, and your scholarship holder considered as an employee, if yes, then it's classified as mission, non-mission intervention regime. But if you are not in that case, you are owner or co-owner. And it's the same if you are intern or yes or not. But if you without any specific status, then you are owner or co-owner. What is the question?
Okay, do you see a question from? Okay, maybe they resume their question because I thought that many of the questions were responded during your presentation. So let's continue on the next subsection and maybe try to finish in 15 minutes.
Yes, I think the last part is it's not very long, it's very short. So that data protection, what we mean by data protection, we know now personal data, what is any information and kind and of any kind and independently of its medium, including sound, image, relating to an identified of identifiable natural person directly or indirectly by reference to an identification number or several specific elements specific to his or her physiological, genetic, psychological, cultural, social, economic, etc. For example, the surname, the first name, the date of birth, postal address, email, telephone, etc. These are personal data. So the formalities required for data processing means a prior declaration of the personal data protection authorities, etc. So for the processing operation, exempted from prior declaration include those used by a natural person exclusively concerning a natural person whose publication is prescribed by a legal and regulation provision, those whose sole purpose is the keeping of a register which is intended for exclusively private use. So still for the processing, you have data on genetic, medical related scientific research, data relating to violation, conviction, or security measurement, identification numbers for public interest purposes, in particular for historical statistic and scientific purpose. So the application for authorization shall be submitted by the controller of his or her legal representative. So protection of subject to personal information, like in the case of the health sector, you have all parties agree to comply with applicable laws. You remember when they are collecting data from the hospital, they ask you to sign agreement, otherwise they will not collect your data. Personal information may not be disclosed except the consent of the subject or person authorized. The protection also applies to samples or biological material, sponsor right, sponsor agree to notify the institution, etc. So sensitive personal data, you have religious or philosophical belief, trade union, members, biometric data, genetic data, political opinion, health data, data related to racial or ethnic, data related to sex life or sexual orientation, etc. So what is a database now? A collection of independent work, data, or other items arranged in a systematic or methodological manner, individually accessible by electronic or means. When you conduct a research using keyword on PubMed, you have some data from this database. You go to Google Scholar, you go to other database, you can have have data that are related to your keywords. So still database, you have under what condition are database protected by copyright? If the selection of agreement and the element of the database has been original character, then you have the copyright protection. Who is the author of the database? The first owner of the database right is the manufacturer. The one who takes the initiative to obtain, verify, and present the content of the database, and who assume the investment risk for these purposes. So you have the article 43 law number, etc., copyright related to its right in Ivory Coast, for example. Obligation to the employer, declare your invention to the employer via declaration of invention, and it includes circumstances, description of the invention, identification, maintaining confidentiality, etc. And you have different types: mission invention, attributable of mission invention, of mission invention not attributable. So for the take home, sorry, I forget to put the line, but I just I think I will say it orally. First, remember that your project produce data result, and you have 3 actions to do. Communicate your result in order to make the public know what you have done. Share your result for the public, for the community, to help them better understand what you're doing, what are the benefit for them of your research. Do what we call the dissemination, publish your data to all database website where you can, to share it with the researcher to help them maybe make it more profitable to the population, to the scientific community. Exploit your result when you can use them to create, to innovate something new, And yes, in that case, now you will go for agreement between institution. You will go for how to say, to make a patent. You will go to have data protection, and you will have to do all related to exploitation data that we have explained right now. So I will not take more time. I think we have been for quite 1 hour and half, 1.5 hours. I will just give back the floor and take the question. Thank you very much. This is what I had to present for this module. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mamadou, for this brilliant presentation. Well done. So we have no more question on the chat, but if the people on the webinar want to ask questions, they can raise their hand. So we have Kwasi Dongo. Let's start by Kwasi. The floor is yours. You can activate your microphone. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to really thank you very much for this presentation. You said more about what is right in research and so on. I would like to see if it's possible to tell more about the ethical issue in research, because this is a crucial issue when you want to publish your article. They raise this issue, and sometimes you are confused. Could you maybe please say more about this and how we can really take this issue into account when we do research? Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Mamadou?
Yes, thank you for the question. I think there is a chapter on ethics, or maybe I will add a chapter on just maybe 2 or 3 slides on this specific question on ethics. So there is a part that talk about the ethical issues in the research. So ethical issues in research involve all aspects of the research, from data collection to data sharing to data exploitation. When you write, for example, a paper, just go for first for dissemination. When you go for writing a paper, before you start analyzing the result, your project should be approved by the institution, by the ethical committee of the institution, so that they make sure you respect the ethical condition requirement about human research, especially on human research. And now even in animal research, you have to respect that. Once you have gone through the ethical committee approval, then when working on the field now and collecting the data, you also have to apply the ethic, like asking the participant to have to sign an agreement of sharing their data. This is in the part of data collection. Now, when publishing your data, again, you will have to confirm that with the journal who ask you, the ethical committee, they will ask you whether you have you agree with the sharing or not sharing. There are many questions you will have to answer before you share your result. Now, when you go to exploiting your data now, how you can how to say apply these ethical issues. The agreement take also into account the ethic aspect of exploiting your data. That's why you see a lot of agreement, a lot of questions, just to avoid bad exploitation of your result. And why we put some jurisdiction in behind your agreement is to just to make sure that when there is a brief, there is a research misconduct, this misconduct can be judged by the law, or this agreement can be, this conflict can be have a third judged by the law and have the respect of the process from data collection, sharing, publication, and result exploitation. When you, I will talk also about plagiarism or a lot of other aspects, but this is typically for publication of the research. All these aspects are also checked during the publication. So maybe I will add a slide in this chapter. I will add a slide on the ethical issues. Hope I answered the question, but you can still precise your question, and then I will answer more clearly. Thank you. Maybe if I missed something, you can add.
Yeah, this is perfect, Mamadou. Maybe Kwasi has
thank you very much. I think you responded to the question, but I would like just to see how to fix the issue where, for example, in the institution you don't have the ethical, commission. Because sometimes we have in Africa some institutions we don't have this ethical committee, and if you want to do the research, at the end of the day they'll ask you to provide a approval for ethical approval. How to fix the situation?
Yeah, thank you. I get your question now. Thank you for the question. Generally, when you're conducting research on human subject or animal subject, when it's a human subject, if your institution, meaning the university or the research institute, has not this ethical committee, the Ministry of Health has an ethical committee. So you have to submit your project to the Ministry of Health, who can approve your project. If it's on animal, then you have the ministry in charge of the sector who will approve your project. This is the way if you don't have an ethical committee in your institution.
Okay, great, perfect. I understand his question, because usually we really don't have in our institutions, but we can look also at the government level or try as we can to follow the rules at the regional levels in terms of ethical disposition. Okay, thank you very much. We have another question, Mamadou. Can software product be patented?
Thank you very much. Professor, can I let you answer to this question?
Yes, I put a link on the question. Yes, it depends on the law of the country, but sometimes it is not the software itself which is patented, but the processes that the software is implemented, or the computer in which the software is installed, or so on. So not the software itself for many laws in many countries, but parts of software could be patented. So I attached a link to the question, so to help the participants to see some further clarifications. So how about the production of scientific paper using the result of the project? What's the IP disclosure right for it? Mamadou, I don't know if you get the question on the chat. How about the production of scientific papers using the results of the project? Yesterday, I talked about the consortium agreement. So if you are in a project, for example, you have 5 work packages. So if you work in one work package, for example, 3 with partner B, So you can publish result of this work package activities involving your partner. But also, what is important, there are two things that are important. There is the contribution, the scientific contribution on the work that has been done. So this justify the inclusion of a scientific collaborator. And then there is the context in which the work has been done. So the context is the project itself and the funding body who funded this project. So beyond the inclusion of the co-authors, you need to add some acknowledgement section referring to the project itself or to the funding body. And another question here is, I will leave the meeting in another half an hour as I got to travel somewhere. I hope it's fine. Yes, sure. And we will contact you soon with the quiz to complete for getting the certificate. And then you will also receive an email with the links to access to the video recordings, course materials, and so on, and slides and database of the funding bodies. We prepare it in module 2. Another question is, I want to responding on the question on ethical clearance. I want more clarity. I want responding to the question on ethical clearance. I want more clarity on obtaining ethical clearance from Ministry of Health. If no ethical committee in a hospital where a study was done. Yeah, I think this is a contribution. Yes, there is many level where you can request this ethical document. So at the university level or at the ministry level, sometimes you have committees at the national level. For example, in Senegal, you have a national committee on personal data. Sometime for more general works, processing personal data, you need to request for agreement from this committee. Thank you very much for the contribution.
Yeah, I think there is also sometimes at the hospital there is a committee, ethic committee where you can submit. And generally, as you said, there are national committee, there are the ministry, there are the university. There might be somewhere an ethical committee where you can submit your project. Okay, thank you. I think I see.
Yeah, I responded already.
Oh, okay. I see you responded. Okay.
Okay, Mamadou. So let's have a 10-minute break and go straight to the next module, the next and final module on project evaluation and monitoring. Thank you again, Mamadou, for your brilliant presentation.
Everyone. See you soon.
Just a break and see you in 10 minutes.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. Yes, we will cut the break on the recordings. We forgot it, so we will do it later. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay. Okay, now let me share my screen and start it in full screen. So we have a question we will answer at the end of this session of this module. Okay, great. So Mamadou, are you here? Can we start?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
I was looking at the questions. I think
Yes, we can reply on this one at the end.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to close this training by the 8th module on monitoring or evaluation of project and program. Maybe there is a clarification here to give about the difference between program and project. Program is a broader term or a broader activity. So in a program, you can have many projects. So for example, you can have a program in West Africa for fighting against, for example, infectious diseases. And within the program of, for example, 10 years by 2030, we can have many projects, one on developing a predictive model on malaria, another one for developing vaccine for COVID-19, etc. So a program is broader than a project. But here, the techniques, the tools, and the skills we will give here are applicable to projects and program. So this presentation is given by me, Gaoussou CAMARA, the DST and Digital Science and Technology Network Coordinator, and also Associate Professor at University Alioune Diop of Bombay in Senegal. So let's go straight to the presentation of the purpose of this module. The objective is to understand the challenges and mechanisms of project or program monitoring, and to have methods and tools for monitoring and evaluation. This is the 8th module of this series of courses. Our presentation will follow an outline of 4 subchapters. First, we will talk about program monitoring to see the context, what is it about, the objectives of program monitoring, the stakeholders that are involved in program monitoring, and the steps for implementing program monitoring. This is the methodology we will present for any program monitoring implementation. And second, we have the coordination and administrative follow-up. So we will see in the introduction that the monitoring can be divided in 2 parts: the coordination and administrative follow-up, and the monitoring and evaluation. We will see the details, presentation of global recommendation and practical examples. And for monitoring and evaluation, we will see the definition of the concept, the challenges and key concepts, the logic framework, which is very important. And we have already seen the logic framework when we were talking about the budget. And as you can see in the logic framework, we had a column about the indicators, which is the key elements that is used in monitoring and evaluation of a project. And also we will talk about impact monitoring. If you remember, the impact is the expected result in a medium or long or very long term. And then we will also see a guideline on how to monitor impact of a project, and then a conclusion to summarize our course. So what is program monitoring? The monitoring phase of a program takes place at a very early stage after the validation of the call for project, and from the beginning of the implementation of the project. So the monitoring is, a continuous activity, and from the beginning of the implementation of the project and throughout its duration, in parallel with the deployment of operational activities, the activities of your project. It may also include a wrap-up phase in the weeks following the end of your project. So before the beginning of the project, during the project implementation, and weeks or months after the end of your project. However, it must be considered from the project development phase for the most optimal and efficient monitoring possible. Several aspects must be taken into account, and the more this preparation in advance is done, and in conjunction with the development of operational activities, the more fluid the monitoring can be. As you can see, the monitoring in the picture here is a central activity of project implementation. So you have to define the type of monitoring. As I said, we have the administrative monitoring, and we have also the monitoring and evaluation. And then define the monitoring objectives, and then identify the monitoring officer, identify or define the tools you are using for this monitoring, and then process to define the process on how to perform the monitoring and collect the data, because monitoring is a process of collecting data, analyzing this data, and then using the result to improve your activity. So what is it about? Monitoring represents all the actions that make it possible to ensure the proper implementation of the project in relation with the objectives set. So the objectives of your project must be the referent of your monitoring activity. As I said, there are two types of monitoring: coordination and administrative follow-up, and monitoring and evaluation. So usually the coordination and administrative follow-up is done by the lead. And usually when you define the work packages of your project, you have work package 0, which represent the coordination and administrative work package. And in this work package, you have all aspects related to contractual and legal. You have aspects related to the procedures, and as aspect related to the budget. So the budget usage, the budget monitoring, and so on. And you have the second type of monitoring, which is monitoring and evaluation. And this part include aspects related to results and impact indicators. So evaluation of the ongoing of the project implementation and adjustment of the activities, to be able to achieve the objectives set. So to be relevant and useful, monitoring must be permanently connected to operational deployment of your activities. So even if we have two types of monitorings, all of these monitorings are closely related to the operational development. When you talk about the contract, the procedure, for example, the budget, all these aspects are related to the operational deployment of your activities. And also the monitoring of the indicators are also closely related to the operational deployment, because when deploying the activities, you are reaching some results having impact on the indicators. So we will later on talk about how to update the indicators when deploying your activities. The main objective of the monitoring is to always ensure an efficient development of the project with the help of focused and relevant practices, collect of useful data, analyze of this data, and make some adjustment. Depending on the type of monitoring, there may be also some specific objectives. Monitoring of compliance with funding body, monitoring of the budget for financial reporting and for audit, very, very important, and monitoring of indicators to report on project results. So we need also to know that monitoring is not an inspection. The aim is not to make employee and team feel, supervised. It is a collaborative work. Monitoring is not also achieving. It's not a matter of collecting data and documents and store them somewhere. And monitoring is not a waste of time. It's not a necessary process. The aim of the monitoring is to be organized in such a way that it is not a waste of time. And in the monitoring activities, you have the involvement of many stakeholders. Monitoring is only useful if the results of the monitoring or the insights of the monitoring can be shared with those who need the information collected. So it is an essential to have the right people in mind. So if you are doing a monitoring of a project or a program, and take care of the communication, because data need to be exchanged, and the result of the monitoring need also to be communicated with the stakeholders. For example, the responsible of the monitoring of the project activities, which is sometimes the responsible of the coordination team or a dedicated person, need to communicate often with the management of his institutions, but also with the operational teams, the end beneficiaries, but also with the funding body, the partners, and the auditors. So how to implement monitoring? We can implement a monitoring activity by following 5 steps. The first one is to frame the monitoring. So get to know the existing element and the expectation of the funding body. Here we talk about the funding body in terms of stakeholder for the monitoring. But as I said, the monitoring could be with the operational team, the monitoring could be with the management team, with the partners, and with the auditors. In any case, you need to define the purpose of your monitoring, and then define processes and tools. So based on the monitoring objectives, you need to clearly define the appropriate processes to be implemented for monitoring, and then develop the associated tools. So there are many tools. This could be communication tool, this could be data collection tools, and so on and so on. And then implement the monitoring process and tools. Implementing monitoring process and collect the data. And step 4, transcripts and formalize. So this step consists in synthesize, transcripts, and formalize the collected data, and to analyze it and share it. So as I said, the monitoring is a process of collecting data, to analyze them, and share the result of this analysis. So as you can see, the step 5 is a kind of cycle step, which aims to come back to the second step, and then show a kind of continuous monitoring. Because after analysis of the information, we need to assess some adjustment to be made in the deployment of your project. And after that, we need also to restart the process from step one, redefining new processes for new monitoring, define the tools, and then implement, collect the data, transcript, and then assess the result. Maybe if it is necessary, we can also make some new adjustments. So we will highlight two types of monitoring: the coordination and administrative follow-up. So for the coordination and administrative follow-up, we will firstly present the concept and the global recommendations, and then we will highlight and we will show an example. So what is it about? In parallel to the deployment of activities and operational monitoring, it is necessary to carry out the coordination and administrative monitoring of the project. I think the people who have already lead projects know what I'm talking about. This is a very, very time-consuming and very difficult task. This consists in ensuring that all the administrative aspects regulating and framing the implementation of the project are respected. It therefore covers elements of form and processes at a meta level of the project, such as contractual and legal aspect, the procedural aspect, and budgeting aspects. Yeah. So also perceived as sometimes less exciting because you may consider that you are doing the less exciting work of the project because some other partners are working on the scientific aspect while you are working on the administrative one. But they are nevertheless fundamental because they govern the validity and the admissibility of the project. They can have an impact on the operational deployment and even on financial aspect. As I say, this is really time-consuming, not very tangible in the eyes of some stakeholders. The management of this aspect takes time and requires good organization to be taken in account all along the project. I used to give an example of a colleague who told me that in his country, if you gain a project, there are two types of projects. If you gain one of these two types of projects, you have some release from your charge in terms of education to let you the time to properly manage your project. So you can be released half of your time to focus on your project management, just to show how it is important, this administrative monitoring of a project. So to perform an administrative monitoring of project, we will follow the different steps we define it in the monitoring implementation methodology. As a reminder, we had the framing, and then step 2, the definition of processes and tools. Step 3, the implementation of processes and tools. Step 4, the transcripts and formalization of the result analysis. And step 5, the assessment of the adjustment to be made on the ongoing of the project. So step 1, the framing. The first framing step is important to have a good understanding of the issues at stake in the administrative follow-up of the project. This may involve a careful study of available framework document, for example, financing agreement, procurement rules, financing plans, procedure guides. All these documents can exist in two places. Your funding body can provide you these documents, but also in your own institutions or your own country, you have specific frameworks or procedures regarding financial procurement and processes. So this phase also, as I said earlier, need also an open exchange to understand the funding body expectation and anticipate its demands. because the funding body can have some specific requirements that go beyond the requirements or the procedures existing in your institutions or in your country. So a definition of time milestones is also needed that will frame the administrative follow-up. For example, framework dates for the project, phase of audit, reporting, steering committee. Because sometimes, as I said, you can have intermediary reports at the end of the first year. You can have a half-year audit process, etc., etc. So you need to consider all these time milestones of your project implementation to be on time and avoid any delay on your administrative monitoring. So some points of attention: the rule and practices in terms of administrative follow-up vary according to several aspects. As I said, the funding body, the size of the project, the country of intervention. The monitoring of these aspects within the funding body may vary also according to the person involved with. The human aspect must be taken into account, and project manager expectation and operating methods must be clearly defined. So, example of framing aspects for administrative monitoring. For example, for the contractual and legal aspect, we can consider regulatory requirements for project implementation. We can consider official implementation period and of implementation deadline for the use of fund, because the a funding body can say the deadline to use your fund is for 3 years. So any expense beyond this date will not be applicable or accepted. But it could be also some deadline for payment. So you can execute some activities before the end of the deadline of the project. For example, if the end of the project is the 31st of this year, so you can execute some activities, but the payment of these activities cannot go beyond 6 months after the end of the project, for example. So, and then there are expectations in terms of reporting, intermediary report, final report, and so on and so on. So procedural aspects, and for example, here we have the validation process and system requirement for internal financial system, regulatory framework for procurements. For example, you can have some threshold in terms of how to process when it comes to procure some equipment or someone. Ethical guidelines and procedures for limiting maybe or avoiding the finance of illegal financing, maybe for terrorism activities and so on. And for ethical guidelines, for example, we can see some regional regulation, but also at the international level. For example, in Europe, you have the RGP, the GDPR, General Regulation for Personal, something like that. So these are some procedural aspect that needs to be considered in the administrative monitoring. And then we have the budgetary aspect. So official financing plan and budget outlines, you need to deliver all these details. Level of details expected for the budget and expenditure. Sometimes this can be indicated by the funding body. For example, if you buy, for example, an equipment, do they need to have the invoice from your service provider, or do they only need that your institution provide an invoice? So it depends. You need to be aware of these requirements. Budget modification process, for example, if you have an activity in which you need more money, or in which you have consumed less than expected, so you can have a definition of a process of reallocation of budget, to cover this balance. Okay, and step 2, always for the administrative monitoring, definition of processes and tools to be used for the data collection. This second step consists in the definition of monitoring process. Based on the monitoring objectives, you define initial processes. Who is responsible for the monitoring? Who is involved in the process? At what stage? To do what? What are the level of validation? Then it comes the development of the tool, which must be adapted to the monitoring objective, tracking files, subscription and configuration of online tools, reference framework to be transmitted. In this part, usually the funding body can provide some templates, but if the funding body didn't provide templates, you can prepare your own templates, but these templates need to be validated in collaboration with the funding body. This is the point in this final statement. It is important to share this process and tools with the relevant stakeholders, provide the right level of information, and even training them if necessary. So good to know the type of tool and document vary according to the objective of the monitoring. Depending on the donor, there may be reference framework, as I say, to be used, and it will really save time. So some tools have an official purpose and need to be validated with your collaborators or stakeholders. Also have an internal use and serve as a working basis. So you can prepare it by yourself and then use it internally. But in any case, education on tools and processes is very important to ensure their adoption with all the stakeholders, because when you are collecting data for your monitoring, you do the collection with your operational teams and with your beneficiaries. So you need to educate these groups, on the usage and the usefulness of these tools in the monitoring of the project. And step 3 for the administrative monitoring now comes to the collection and monitoring, the implementation of the process and tools and collection of data. According to the process and deadlines defined in step 1 and 2, monitoring can be carried out continuously or punctually according to a defined rhythm. Now, it is always advised to choose a way according to the type of monitoring or according to the data you want to collect. So this could help a lot if you do a continuous collection of data. This could help also to be in time according to the deadlines. The person in charge of monitoring is responsible of ensuring the process is well planned. It may be useful to define a timetable for given deadline and to give the relevant stakeholders plenty of advance notice of data collection by means of reminder. And step 4, the formalization of the administrative monitoring. It consists to transcribe, synthesize, and formalize the information and data you have collected in the monitoring process. So the previous step, with aim to share it with the relevant stakeholders. So the deliverables are the elements that present the useful outputs of the monitoring process. Outputs means the process of the data you have collected during the monitoring process. And these outputs aims at allowing for decision making or adjustment within the project. So what are the expected deliverables? Technical implementation report, financial report from your financial department, audit report. Who are these deliverables for? Your funding body, the partners, the internal team. What are the deadlines? So the steering committee, the annual reporting defined by your funding body, or the end of the project audit. Who should approve the deliverables? The funding body, sure, and the management maybe of your institutions. Maybe for some projects, no validation is required for the deliverables, for example, to have access to, for example, another transfer, another money transfer. So the formalization step can be time consuming because it requires not only structuring the data, but also analyzing it in depth to extract the information needed to steer the project. So it is important to define a precise timetable and a clear division of the task. If you are working in a group in the project, you have many work packages. Even if the coordination and administrative work package is responsible for the monitoring, many of the data that are used or that are collected for the monitoring comes from the other operational work packages. So you need to really divide the task and identify some responsible persons in this work package, operational work package, to help provide the needed data for your monitoring process. And finally, we have the adjustment step. And as the aim of the monitoring is to ensure that the project is running smoothly, it is important to implement actions and adjustments. This is the final impact purpose, or the most important purpose of the monitoring. The monitoring is not a surveillance of the project of the person. The monitoring, the purpose is to help achieve the objectives set by the project. So if the monitoring highlights or discovers some obstacles during the implementation of the project, so the monitoring must help the team to adjust some activities, some budget or resources to be able to reach the objectives. And now we can use a practical example to see how we can implement a coordination and administrative follow-up. So the previous slides gave the methodology and the steps to be implemented or to follow to perform the coordination and administrative follow-up. So our case study is based on some administrative follow-up of a project. For example, using a procedures guide. So a procedures guide exists in many institutions. You have administrative procedure guide in your university or research institutions, but you can have also a guide or a document for procurements, another document for budget monitoring or for reporting. So the procedures guide represent the first step of the monitoring methodology, namely here the framing of the monitoring. And then the procurements is related to the 3 steps. So the procurements, the budget monitoring and reporting, when they will be implemented, need to follow the three steps here, the step 2, the step 3, and the step 4. Okay, note that these elements are not exhaustive examples, and that monitoring of any other aspect required to be required by the funding body can be set up using the same methodological steps. So we will see the examples in the following slides. So for the procedures guide, I hope you still hear me, Mamadou. Hello, Mamadou.
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Oh, okay, great. Perfect.
Yep.
Yeah, I just lost my electricity here in my office. Okay, let's continue. So the procedures guide here, what is it about? It's a framework document validated by the funding body or your institutions, which contains all the indications and rules for the administrative monitoring for the project. For example, if you wanted to hire a financial staff for your project, or you wanted to hire an administrative assistant of your, or research assistant of your project, there is procedures on how to how to hire it. The objective of the procedure guide is that all the rules governing the administrative aspect of the project are clearly defined and accessible to the teams. And usually this procedure guide is provided by the funding body. For example, if a European Union or AFD, French Agent Development Agency, provide a procedure guide. And the content of this procedures guide is the context, objectives, and activities of the program, of the call, the presentation of the procurements, so the threshold, the procurement process, the rule of accounting process, recording of expenditure, the rules on auditing and reporting, the communication rules, and the rules on mission and travel management. As you can see, these documents will guide, the process of implementing your activities. So if you wanted to travel in another country for a conference, for example, there are rules defining on how to perform this mission, how this mission are supported, what is supported, and at what threshold. And this document is drafted by the coordination team and is submitted to the funding body for validation. But in my experience, usually the funding body provide procedure guides. But this could be associated with the procedure guide of the institution that is leading the project. So this document includes many useful appendices for the implementation of administrative processes. Usually the document can provide templates for procurement. You can have also template for integrity statement, contract templates, for example, the template for minutes of your meetings, and also rules and amount defined for each country, for example, when you are traveling. And commitment towards the funding body is needed to ensure the right level of details is presented. So this may be modified according to the evolution and the need of the project, but always in discussion and then in collaboration with the funding body. And for the procurement, as I said, so the procurement as an example in the administrative monitoring will follow the 3 steps from the second. So by defining the process and develop the tools. For example, the process to be defined for each external service according to the estimated amount and the procurement threshold. So expression of need, I think many of you are familiar on how to do procurements in universities, depending, or research institute, depending on the threshold of the service providing or the service amount. Sometimes if it's a big amount, you need an expression of need and drafting of term of reference to do a call for expression of interest for pre-selection of providers, sending the request for proposal to the list of service providers, reception and evaluation of technical and financial offers, and then the selection of service providers, and finally contracted. And you know what? We have finished last 2 years a project with AFD, and you know what? All these documents are requested by the auditors. And if you don't follow these steps, you will face too many problems during the auditing process. That's why it is very important. It is very important to have the reference guide of your funding body, or the reference guide that it is validated by your funding body, and then for each activities of your project to do your best to follow all the requirements of this guide. So this is for the definition of the process and the development of the tools for the procurement monitoring. And then there are other parts, but I will skip them and go to the third points, the implementation and the collection of data. So who will be collecting the data for the procurement? This is the operational teams. As I said, we have the coordination and administrative teams, but we have also operational teams that are implementing some scientific work packages. For what? Production of document for contracting, monitoring of good processes, request for validation to the funding body at each step, and then archiving. As you can see in the picture at the bottom right, you can see the subfolders. Here it is mentioned in French, but this is the request for proposition, the resume of the shortlisted service providers, the propositions received, the grades given by the committee and the minutes, the contract, and then the deliverables by the service provider. So you need to have a very organized folders in which you keep all these documents, because they will be needed when it comes the time of reporting or deliverables or auditing. And then the step 4, transcript and formalize, update and validate the PPM, CATC production document for contracting, archiving of document for each step of the process, and archiving of deliverables once the service has been completed. Okay, let's see another example of administrative monitoring, which is related now to the budget monitoring. So the context and monitoring challenge here is the analysis to analyze the progress of expenditure in relation to the granted budget, to anticipate cash flow tension and also possible requests for payment. So the process to be defined here is the recording of expenditure by the financial manager, which is very, very also important. I am remembering some issues we had with some missing documents from the financial departments. So the payments need to be defined, need to be recorded. For example, if it is a payment done by a bank transfer or by check or by cash and so on. Projection for future expenditure, compilation of data, analysis of expenditure progress. So the tools to develop is expenditure tracking and budget projection file. You can define your own template, to continuously record all the expenditure. And then you can develop also a dashboard that can help you have an overview on the progress of your available budget or consumed budget. And then in step 3 for this administrative monitoring, you implemented the monitoring and collected the data. So who collected the data? This is the financial staff and the coordination team in collaboration to collect the financial data. So for what? Collecting financial data, aggregating financial projection, and producing the report. So the frequency depends on the size of the project, but could be monthly or maybe at a key stages, for example, for some audits, steps or claims from the funding body or at the end of the program. So be sure to identify any expenditure threshold for triggering payment claims. For example, don't wait to run out of cash and then start your procedure of requesting a payment. So if you see that your first available amount of money is finishing, so you can start the process of triggering payment claim to anticipate to run out of cash. So now, after the data are collected, we need to transcribe them and to formalize them. An example of formalization is the table you have here that represent a global view of your budget, or the budget of your project. For example, here you have the different parts of your budget you have received. So first part and the second part. And you have what is important here, I wanted to highlight, is the consumed amount of your available budget. As you can see here, you have a flow that indicates here what is the level of consuming of the budget. And at any time, you can see where you are near the 100% or where you are, delayed in the consuming of your budget. And as you can see, the total consuming percentage here is at 61%, so which is maybe reasonable, and then you can continue implementing your project. So the idea here is to have a tool, a reporting tool or a dashboard that can, on the transcript and formalization part, that will highlight, the most important aspect regarding the budget usage for your project implementation. So as I said, maybe somewhere in my previous slides, if necessary, you can make budget reallocation if the event of under or over consumption of lines. But this reallocation needs to be validated by your funding body. For example, when we had a project during the COVID, we need to do a survey on site. We were not able to do it because of the COVID restriction. So we did the survey online, and we had something like more than 10,000 euros dedicated to the survey on site. But since we could not do the survey on site, we asked it to the funding body if we could use this money to fund another activity. And the funding body accepted this. So when it comes to the auditing, so the audit said that, so you use this money not for unexpected activities, which is the on-site survey. Why do you use it for another activities? We tell to the auditor that no, the funding body accepted to use this money for another activity. And they ask us, okay, tell us the proof that they accepted. So we look at our email, we exchange it, and we send a copy of this email, and the expenses were validated. So you need always to get the validation of this kind of reallocation or any kind of change of your project with your funding body, and to have it in a transcript way by email or by letter or something like that, and not only, for example, by telephone. And now a third example here regarding the reporting. So we talked about the procurement example, the budget monitoring example, and now the reporting example. So for the reporting example, the implementation of the project is punctuated by technical reports or steering committees to report on the progress of the project. So for the process definition, we need to establish a system for archiving information as it comes in, weekly or weekly meeting minutes or any other deliverables. Define a division of labor for collecting this data. And for the tools, we can have an activity monitoring files or tools. You can define a template. You can send it to any of your partners, to all of your partners, to fill, to complete for your reporting purpose, and implement the report template and present the template to the steering committee. And the implementation of the monitoring and the collect of information for this reporting. So this is done by the coordination team in collaboration with the operational team. So it is the collection of operational data on activities carried out on the major successes, the block points or the problem encountered, next steps, formatting and archiving the corresponding annexes. So the reporting is mainly related to the activities, their implementation, and the results. So according to the frequency agreed with the funding body, so you can define a frequency of collecting this data. So if you need to send a half-yearly report, so you need to do it every 6 months. Or if you have to send a yearly report or intermediary report, so you can do it also every year or by the end of every year. So for the transcripts here, to formalize and synthesize the data, that takes time, so we can anticipate the deadlines. That's why earlier I said you can do it by the end of the year. So if the frequency is a year, don't wait the end of the year to ask for the report. So you can ask it, for example, by October or November, to be able to have time to have the data and to process this data. You can see here an example of summary of the information from the team implementing the activity 1.1. For example, you remind here the objective of the activity, you remind the target indicators of your activity that will help monitor the success of your activity. And you can also mention the actors that are involved in the activity and the budget that is used for this activity. You can put the expected budget, the consumed budget, and the remaining budget. And the work that was carried out, so the different tasks can be listed. The work to be done, so the remaining works, the major successes, and the important points you can mention here, the obstacles, the delays, and so on. So, and finally, to analyze and adjust if necessary. So the half-yearly deadline are an opportunity to review the adjustments to be made to the deployment of activities. So if you have a project of 1 year and you wait at the end of the year to do the reporting monitoring, if you find some problem, you don't have time to do adjustment. That's why it is important to have some intermediary reporting activities for your project. Great. Now we have finished the first part regarding the coordination and administrative monitoring. We can go straight to the monitoring and evaluation, which is related to the results or the impact of your project. But from here, I can see if we have some questions and try to answer. Okay, so I have one from, okay, thank you very much, very interesting. And we have Samuel, good day, sir. Please, can I get the video of all the presentation? Sure, you will get them by next week. As I said, we will just review the videos and then send you the course materials. And another question from Tomori is, good day, sirs. It was mentioned that university own the data or output of our research, and thus they own it intellectual property to it. The question is, how can that be in a situation where a researcher is responsible 100% finance of his research input? Maybe the question is not very clear, but responsible 100% of, you know what, sometimes when it comes to sign the agreement, the project agreement or the project contract, it's not the researcher, it's himself or herself who signed the contract. It's the institutions. It is the institution who signed the contract. So the responsible here is the institution. So researchers can be responsible for the implementation of the project in coordination with the institution management. So from my point of view, if you are hired by your university, there are some points Mamadou talked about the intellectual properties you produce for your university and so on. But if you work for a company, what you produce is for the company, but you can have some rights on some parts, but mainly it's for your institutions, and the institution is the only responsible of the project that come in the institutions. Maybe you can, Tamari, please, you can clarify your questions, what you mean by a researcher is responsible 100% finance of his research input. Is it in a case of a funded project, or is it in a case of a research project that the researcher is conducting himself by his own means? But don't forget that for the university employees, mainly the researchers or the faculty members, in your salary, you have a part of your salary for teaching and part of your salary that is paid for doing research. Yeah. In any case, if you have your own money, you put in your research activities, maybe you will need to justify the origin of this money that is different from the one that is given by your institution. Okay. So one hand raised, Charity. So Charity, I can let you ask your question if you want. Yes, Charity.
I think Charity is logged twice.
Yes, so
Charity, can you unmute your microphone, please? And there is Kwasi Dongo also who has raised her hand.
Yeah, Kwasi raised it in the previous module.
Okay, it's on all the hand then.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
No, not one.
Okay, Lola Olojiti.
Okay, let's continue, Mamadou, and then maybe they can.
Yeah, okay. I think you can go, and it's almost done.
Yeah.
And don't forget to use the Q&A to ask your questions. I also responding to some questions, so do not hesitate to use the Q&A.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much again for your patience. Now, let's start the part 3 of this module, which is monitoring and evaluation. So monitoring and evaluation is a management tool to guide actions based on a rigorous analysis of past and current events. This can be defined also as a pilot support to ensure that the project achieves its objectives. So monitoring and evaluation are implemented via quantitative and qualitative indicators to be completed throughout the program. So via data collection tools and decision support tools. So this allows to assess in real time the progress and evolution of activities and stakeholders and gather the perception of beneficiaries. It guides also future programs of this type and at the end of the project. So the challenges and key concepts regarding monitoring and evaluation process is composed of two phases. Monitoring and evaluation process is composed of two phases, each of which is necessary, complementary, and must be thought of together to be coherent. So we have the monitoring phase and we have the evaluation phase. The difference is that the monitoring is an ongoing measurement of and collection of data. Monitoring aims to improve the program implementation and focus on analyzing the progress of the activities. And the evaluation is an assessment carried out punctually based on the monitoring data. Assessments that allows for broader questions to be answered than just the achievement of results. For example, as you can see in the timeline of the project, you have the S representing monitoring. It was in French, suivi. The S we can replace by M here, represent the monitoring on the orange line, and you have a punctual, appearance of evaluation, of your project. And once you do the evaluation, you may provide some adjustments on the ongoing of the activities. So monitoring and evaluation focus on collecting data on the following aspect: the result achieved or achieved at the moment of the monitoring, the needs addressed, the outputs, activities, goods, and service produced or deployed by the activities or by the project, the beneficiaries, group or target for the activities implemented, the resources, so the means used, mainly here the budget used or the other resources acquired using your budget, the beneficiary satisfaction, and the impact, the long-term change implied by your activities. So in any case, when you are performing monitoring and evaluation process, you need to follow the monitoring implementation procedures we provided. Step 1, framing. Step 2, defining the process and tools. Step 3, collecting the data. Step 4, formalizing, transcript and formalizing. And step 5, adjust. So in order to properly frame the monitoring and evaluation system, it is important to integrate it into the project development phase. So a clear definition of stakeholders' expectations around monitoring and evaluation. For example, from the program operator, consistency of the program with objective, reporting of the use of funds, analyzing the effectiveness of the project are the different expectations for the program operators. For the funding body, their expectations are related to be regularly informed about the progress of the program, the use of the funds, and the achievement of the set results. And for the beneficiaries, so the beneficiaries, the group who benefits from the implementation of the activities, ensure that their expectations are properly taken into account. Check the quality of the activity they benefit from. And a choice of appropriate qualitative and quantitative indicators are also needed. So the quantitative indicators are those quantitative indicators that are easily observable or measurable. For example, you can have numbers, percentage, rates, ratio, which are indicators that can be compared, and the qualitative indicators represent a multi-level scale of values. For example, you can have an indicators with some modalities, good, average, bad, to reflect on opinion, perceptions, or development. And then we need to formalize it in a reference document. And the reference document used for formalizing the monitoring and evaluation system here is the logical framework. We have seen an example of logical framework in the budget, in the activity and budget module, the module 6. But here we will see a more explicit logical framework using the indicators for the evaluation and monitoring of the activities. Good to know information. A definition of indicators align it with the reality of the project on the field is fundamental. Now, otherwise it will be confusing throughout the project. For this, it is important to provide reflection internally and with the different stakeholders, for a coherent alignment with the logical objectives defined for the project. So this is not an easy exercise to define. This is not an easy to define indicators, but we will see in the next slide, for example, what are the key criteria for good indicators, as it has been done, has been said, for example, for the objectives and expected result. An indicator also must be SMART, meaning specific, measurable, because if you cannot measure the indicators, you cannot assess, the ongoing of your project. Achievable, relevant, and time bound. So these different characteristics were already been detailed in previous module 3. And after you have identified your indicators for each of your specific objectives, you need to formalize this in a logic framework. As I said, it is a table of lines and columns. But for this logic framework, you can have so two first column corresponding to the specific objective and expected results. Expected results correspond to the concrete realization of your project. Here you have 2 lines, 3, and the second line is the explanation, and the third line is an example. For example, here you can put the title of the specific objective and then formulate the expected result for this specific objective. And then you have the indicator column where you can provide the title of the corresponding indicators. You have the calculation definition mode. How do you calculate your indicator values, or how do you collect your indicator values? And you have the initial values of your indicators at the beginning of the project, and you have your targeted values of your indicators for the milestones of your project deployment. For example, if it is a project of 1 year, at month 6, what values do you expect for your indicators? And at month 12, what values do you expect for your indicators? And then data sources you have to provide, which is the source of the data you use to calculate or to define the values of your indicators. And then you have 3 more columns talking about the data collection methods. For your data sources, the data collection frequencies, and the person in charge of the collection of the data. This point also is very, very important, because if you don't define the responsible of collecting this data, when it comes the moment of the data collection, so you can miss this data because you have you don't have a responsible for this task. So as an example here, we have a specific objective, which is to increase the skill level of startups support professionals. So we talk about startups, and we want to improve or to strengthen the capacities of the supporting professionals for startup building. And here the expected result is that the human resources of the support structure are trained with dedicated courses. And for this specific objective, what is the indicators? The indicators is the number of people trained. So according to the values we will get, we can assess if the project is a success or not, depending on the targeted values. As we can see, the indicators is the number of people trained, but at the beginning of the project, the initial values here is 0. 0% were trained, and the number of persons expected to be trained at month 6 is 20, and the number of persons expected to be trained at month 12 is 40. So, and how to calculate or to identify the values of these indicators is the calculation of the number of people training. What is the data source? The data source from where we can calculate these values is the list of participants in the training course. And the data collection method is the export of the list from the learner cohort tracking tools. suppose we have, for example, learning tools we use online, or it could be also a list of presents of to be filled, for example, at the end of each module, of each course. And the frequency of collection, the data are collected for each course and exported every 6 months. And the responsible in charge of the collection of the data is the head of the training unit or the training work package. I hope this is clear, because this is very important. As you can see, for the monitoring, we will be using this tool to update the table, update the indicators values, and then assess or analyze these values to maybe provide some adjustment. And the step 2 is the processes definitions and tools definitions also. So the data collection methodology, adapted and functional, example, exporting data and importing into an Excel file, monitoring tools, continuous filling, processing of response to questionnaires, etc. So define the collection frequency, the reporting frequency, identify the person that is responsible. So this is very important. This can look like, narrative, but you need to describe the process so that you ensure that you have all the information or all the steps well defined. And defining or creating the tool, so internal tool, we can use Word, Excel, online data collection tool, Google Form, to register the participants, specific data analysis tools for the reporting, etc. The testing process and tools, carry out reporting tests, train and inform the stakeholders, and so on. Okay. But not that the time of defining, as you can imagine, of defining the right processes and tools can itself be time consuming, but can be effective later on if you are clear on this stage on what process are you following to collect the data and what tools are you using to collect the data and to analyze the data. It can save a lot of time for you in the next steps. So for the collection of data over the course of the project, implement data collection and monitoring from the defined retro planning, sending reminders in advance of the given deadline to the various manager, monitor the proper implementation of data collection, check the data is updated in the dedicated tools, and the reports are sent. Ensure data consistency. This is also very important. It's not a matter of collecting data, but we need also to ensure the quality of the data we collect from the operational teams or for the other stakeholders, The data collection process always can be time consuming, and operational priorities can overshadow the process because sometimes you have your operational team, some technical staff or scientific staff that are more focused on the implementation of their activities rather than providing or filling forms about their activity implementation. The monitoring and evaluation officer ensure that deadlines are met. So I think some of you are very familiar of these problem obstacles. You send a request for data, you send a form to complete, but no one replies, so you need to remind by email, to send a WhatsApp message, or to call by telephone. But it's the role of the coordination team or the monitoring officer. So you need to use any means at your hand to get the data available. So for the formalization for the monitoring, for each indicator, we need to update the actual values to the date given in the logic framework. For example, here, if we come back to our our example here, we can see that we have still the specific objective, the expected result for the specific objective, the indicators, the quantitative or qualitative and methods to define the values of the indicators, the reference data at the beginning of the project, and so on and so on. But here, as you can see, for the transcript and formalization, we added another column here consisting of remedial measures. But if you look at this column, reaching data, rich data, if you see at our framing tool, we don't have the remedial, the last column, we don't have the remedial measures. But if you look at this column before the data source, we have targeted values. But for the formalization, what we have here is the reached values. The reached values is the actual values you have collected at the moment of the data collection or at the moment of the evaluation of your activities. So structuring the data and formalizing the supporting sources of the data can take time. Preparing this kind of table and filling it, updating it is very, very time consuming, but it could help a lot for the next step. And as an example here for filling this tool, you can see an example is the indicators is the number of people trained. The initial values were 0. We can remain the targeted values at 6 months and the targeted values at 12 months. And here we have the reached values at 6 months. You see, we have 15 a person trained. And as you can see, the expected values was 20. And at month 12, it's not applicable yet because we are not yet at 12 months. We are at 6 months. So it means that we are not on time regarding the expected values of trained people. So the data sources, the risk or hypothesis. So the risk to do not obtain the targeted values at the end of the project is that the learners attend all modules. This is an hypothesis. The hypothesis is that the learners didn't attend all modules. The explanation of discrepancies is that the instructions to obtain the certificate, because we consider someone to be trained if this person get a certificate at the end of the training. Maybe we have 30% at month 6 that were training, but they didn't have enough information on how to get the certificate. Only 15 get the right information. So what to do for adjustment measures is to better communicate of the training and certification rules and provide guidelines to the learners. So this is the step 5 for adjustment and for the adjustment. So this part we just see concern the objectives and the result. The results are the immediate, realization of the project. How to monitor and evaluate the objective, if the objectives are attained or if the objective set, we reached these objectives. Now we can see how to monitor the impact of your project. As a reminder, the impact is a long-term concretization or realization or impact of the results of your project. This is very, very difficult to perform. Okay, let me see the messages. Okay. Okay, now I will try to finish on this part very quickly. Beyond the monitoring and evaluation of result indicator presented in the previous logical framework, a more advanced and long-term approach exists and is called impact measurement. So socioeconomic evaluation of program focus on the consequences of the action beyond its immediate effect. Therefore, impact assessment require time and long delays because impact is measured several years to several months after the end of the action. So this is very complex, and there are specific modules, methodologies that can be used. And these methodologies, you can look on the existing documentation in internet to see the methodology regarding the theory of change or the methodology regarding the random evaluation, for example, relatively higher cost methods, but you can random two groups, one that benefits from your project and another one that didn't benefit from your project, and see in the long term what is their impact, what is the impact of your project on this on the group that benefit from your project. And you have also another method called social return on investments, also you can use for impact monitoring. So I think I will go straight to the conclusion. So to conclude here, for any type of monitoring, remember 5 key steps. Frame the monitoring, define the process and develop the tools, implement monitoring and collect the information, transcript and formalize, analyze and adjust if necessary. For good practices, divide the task and attribute responsibilities to your stakeholders or to your teams. Provide a clear communication on challenges, processes, and tools, and then train your teams on using the tools and respecting the processes you have defined it in your step 2, and always stay linked to your operational teams. And above all, to conclude, keep in mind the objective of the monitoring and evaluation. It is to enable the proper implementation of the project to have concrete and impactful results. So thank you very much for your attention, and thank you also for our collaborators from Bondinnov, Aurélie, Jurin, for helping us in preparing this presentation.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you very much for the bright presentation. I also was answering the question directly on the chat, and I think I checked the how to say if there are some hand raised for the question. No, there was Aliou Yaya who was who raised his Aliou Yaya. No, okay, is no longer raising the hand. Okay, so I think we can take just 1 or 2 questions because I think we have largely went over time, and okay, I don't see question on the chat. If you have additional question you would like to ask, please either raise your hand or write the question through the chat, and we'll answer. Thank you very much. Thank you, Gaoussou, for this presentation. Maybe just just one point. Even before you start your project, keep in mind that monitoring and evaluation is a part of the project. Either you conduct monitoring and evaluation or not, this should be part of the project, and it has a key role in the success of your project. As we think, there are some indicators you can use that can help you assess whether your project is working correctly or not. These indicators, you can identify them earlier and keep monitoring them. Even though you're not asked to conduct monitoring and evaluation, you can do it aside just for your own information. And again, generally projects are always associated with monitoring and evaluation. When you have a project being conducted nearby, I mean by other researchers, you can ask them if they have conducted this monitoring and evaluation and indicator that help them to best monitor. This information will help you, they will guide you on your project and on indicators you can use that will work for yes, for monitoring and evaluation of your own project. And there is Edo Okeshalu who said to have the link on pattern software, please. The link on pattern software. Did you share the link on pattern software?
Yes, I can share it again.
Okay, you can share it again for Edo Okeshalu.
Okay. I need a link pattern software, please.
Yes.
Okay. Sent.
Okay, good. So you have the link.
And we have Gregory back, maybe to
Yeah,
conclude.
Gregory, I
And-
think you're around. Can you have some words?
And maybe the group photo also. Maybe I don't know if we can let
definitely,
everyone.
definitely. We would like to have the family photo.
Yes.
So you guys can activate your camera so we can see each other.
They cannot at the moment.
Oh,
I
yes,
think,
yes, yes. You're right.
But let's see what Gregory can do. But I think
I don't think you can.
the panelists can activate their. So let me stop the recording. I think it's can do it.